Today on the BetaFiles, we're going to have some fun. On July 23rd of this year, which at the taping of this episode was 7 days ago, the New York Times ran an article titled, "No Longer in Shadows, Pentagon's UFO Unit Will Make Some Findings Public." So we're going to talk about UFOs. Specifically, the Times runs it as UFO, but the official terms the Pentagon uses, or the military uses, is UAV for Unidentified Aerial Vehicle, or UAP for Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon. So we're going to take a look at that. I'm going to show you a really cool document. This is not one of those crazy documents that you can find out on the internet, about Roswell. This is actually the Senate Intelligence Committee briefing from June 17th of this year. And in it, right down towards the bottom, the chairman, Mr. Marco Rubio, included a provision about unidentified aerial phenomena. So we're going to talk about that, and there is a interview with Marco Rubio that we're going to take a look at real quick that came out of Miami, and then a snippet of an interview with Commander David Fravor when he went on Joe Rogan. David Fravor was one of the pilots. He's the pilot that took the Tic Tac video. If you don't know about that, it's one of the 3 videos that the Pentagon released officially of what they call, again, UAVs or UAPs, what we commonly know as UFOs. So he's going to talk about his experiences with the UFO phenomena and other pilots' experiences in both the Air Force and the Navy, because apparently they've been seeing this stuff for years, and the Pentagon is finally agreeing to let some of this stuff out. And we'll talk about all that. But this is not, so let me give you a warning right now. This is not going to be one of those, Roswell was real videos, and I am going to talk a little bit about Bob Lazar, only because some of the stuff this guy was saying in the 1980s, we're starting to see evidence of it now, and it's kind of like a head scratcher. Like, okay, fellas, how long have you had this stuff for real? So, because one of the interesting things about the Times article, and we're also going to look at a Popular Mechanics article that came out on the same day. This thing broke, and nobody was talking about it because of the social justice movement and the riots and all that. But we're going to talk about an interesting thing that a former government official who now works with one of the aerospace groups, he's a physicist, and he said we have when he and some colleagues had found some wreckage, and he debriefed the intelligence committee and said this is not these things are not made on this planet. So I mean, it's really cool. It's cool stuff. So it's exciting. But again, this is not X-Files. This is not Roswell. This is not that mess. We're going to stick strictly to what the Pentagon has released to the press. And like I said, the only reason why I'm going to bring up Bob Lazar is simply because a lot of the stuff he was saying in 89 and 90 is they're starting to find evidence that he was speaking the truth. So, if you don't know who Bob Lazar is, y'all check it out. It's a very interesting story. But anyway, all right, so hang on to your diapers, babies, for real. This is going to be a fun one. This is the BetaFiles. All right, so like I said in the teaser, this is what we're going to do is look at this article that hit the New York Times, and it's not the reason why I'm sticking to the Times is because it's the most reputable source that reported this story back on the 23rd when it broke. But it's not the only one that broke this story. There are dozens. If you Google Pentagon UFO, you'll see. I mean, it brings up the most recent news stories, and there were a ton of them that reported on this. Excuse me. On the 23rd. I guess that's going to be like my thing. At some point in my podcast, I'm going to yawn. I don't want y'all to think that I find this boring. It's just I yawn a lot because I'm constantly tired. Anyway, so we're going to talk about this article, and then we're going to kind of build off of it and introduce some other things that they kind of mention in the article. The Popular Mechanics article that we're going to talk about is pretty much saying the same stuff. They just add a few things, and they point. They focus a little bit more on Harry Reid, former Senator Harry Reid. But just get this started. If you haven't been paying attention to any of this, right, and this is news, what happened was a couple years ago, Tom DeLonge of Blink-182 started this, the Truth Is Out There X-Files style group, and they got a hold of some actual Navy footage of UFOs, okay? And they posted it to their website, and there was a big brouhaha about it. And then slowly the Pentagon came out, and at first the Pentagon was like, okay, yeah, it's authentic. And then the next time the Pentagon spoke about it, the Pentagon said, actually, here's the real videos, and they gave 2 more videos. So we end up with 3 videos of these. What the government has reclassified from UFO to 2 different terms that you hear bannered about: UAP, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, and UAV, which stands for Unidentified Aerial Vehicle. Okay. Now, the Pentagon will walk up to the line and say, to the line of, and the line being, is this or is this not from another planet? They'll walk up to that line, they won't cross it. Okay. However, and I'm going to play a clip from David Fravor and another clip from Marco Rubio, and they both pretty much say the same thing. They won't say it's from another planet, and I think that's why they kind of changed the verbiage. Well, there's a lot of different reasons why they changed the verbiage. They changed the acronyms, because UFO has become so synonymous with alien crazies, right? If you say, yeah, I saw a UFO, people are like, oh, you're one of those people. Right? Yeah, did they beam you up? How's your behind? If you haven't watched it, I did a Now See This Here Now Then on UFOs. And the actual point of that video, of that particular episode, is drawing a metaphor for what's happening socially in our world right now with the social justice thing. So that was the point of that. But there's a couple of jokes in there about anal probes and that kind of thing. I thought it was funny. But as my ex-wife used to tell me, nobody thinks I'm as hilarious as I think I am. So, which is probably true. I don't care. But hey, if I'm happy and I'm smiling, what does it matter? Who cares why I'm laughing? So anyway, so let's talk about UFOs, or UAPs, or UAVs, or whatever you want to call them, or off-planet Volkswagens. So we can call it that. All right. So they'll all walk up to the line, but they won't cross it. So how do we know that it's alien? Well, We don't, but we kind of do, right? So the New York Times article, again, is called No Longer in Shadows, Pentagon's UFO Unit Will Make Some Findings Public. By the way, I'm going to have links to all the stuff that I'm going to reference in this video in the description for the YouTube video. And I'll put it up also on the blog when the podcast airs. I can't put it in. I'm not able to put it in the description of the podcast. But I will put it up on the blog, so you can go to the blog and get it if you don't want to go to YouTube. So anyway, but it's really easy to find. Like I said, you just Google Pentagon UFO, and the New York Times article is one of the first things that pops up. So it says, despite Pentagon statements that it disbanded a once covert program to investigate unidentified flying objects, the effort remains underway, renamed and tucked inside the Office of Naval Intelligence, where officials continue to study mystifying encounters between military pilots and unidentified aerial vehicles. There's the UAV. Pentagon officials will not discuss the program, which is not classified, but deals with classified matters. In other words, so what that means is that the Pentagon has gotten to the point where, okay, we'll admit there's something out there, but we're not going to let you really dig into it because some of the stuff that we have found is classified right now. So we'll say that it's out there, but we can't let you see it. Yet it appeared last month in a Senate committee report, and I'm going to bring that up here in a minute, outlining, and this you'll be able to get to this too. I'll put a direct link for you in the description as well. Yet it appeared last month in a Senate committee report outlining spending on the nation's intelligence agencies for the coming year. The report said the program, the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, was to standardize collection and reporting on sightings of unexplained aerial vehicles and was to report at least some of its findings to the public within 180 days after passage of the Intelligence Authorization Act. So after they pass this act, which I don't know if it's passed yet or not or what, but they have 180 days. The Pentagon's got 180 days to give us something. So they got to give us something. So in the next month or so, well, no, in the next, 6 months? 180? I don't know. I don't know how many months that is. I'm an English teacher. I'm not a math person. So within the next several months, we're going to get some cool stuff. We're going to see more stuff. And of course, the internet's going to go wild. But I just think it's exciting. I think it's fun. This is one of the few things that's exciting in life right now. While retired officials involved with the effort, including Harry Reid, the former Senate Majority Leader, hope the program will seek evidence of vehicles from other worlds, its main focus is on discovering whether another nation, especially any potential adversary, is using breakout aviation technology that could threaten the United States. Okay, so here's the thing. So, as you know, I've kind of been making my way through Matt Taibbi's Hate Inc. I'm not a slow reader. I'm reading like 4 books right now, okay, at one time. So it's taking me a while to get through Taibbi's book because I'm reading like 3 others, so on top of it. So I just kind of like jostle back and forth between the books. But one of the things he talks about is this type of article is typically printed as general, quote unquote, general information for the public, but what it's actually doing is it's sending out a coded message to our adversaries saying, basically what it's saying is we've got it. That's what it is, and so we've found something, don't try anything. And of course they bring in Rubio. And Rubio's the guy. Senate Marco Rubio, the Florida Republican who is acting chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, told a CBS affiliate in Miami this month that he was primarily concerned about reports of unidentified aircraft over American military bases. That was in the government's interest to find out who was responsible. Okay, so, and I'm going to play you the interview that this is referencing here in a second. You'll get to see Rubio or you'll get to hear Rubio talking about this, and it's pretty crazy. It's pretty funny. It's weird. But what Rubio's concerned with is what anybody would typically be concerned with. You see something flying over our military bases. You can't identify what it is. You can't identify whose it is. You're going to get a little nervous. What are they looking in on us? Are they checking out our weapons? You know? So, so what we've got is a senator who has found a way to kind of pull the Pentagon out a little bit. He expressed concerns that China or Russia or some other adversary had made some technological leap that allows them to conduct this sort of activity. So he's saying this could be China or Russia. So he's, again, they'll walk up to the line, but they won't cross it, right? They won't say, eh. So the aliens are basically going to have to come down and walk up to your front door and say, we're here, before the U.S. government will be like, maybe it's aliens. Could be a Chinese trick. Maybe. We don't know. We're not saying it's not, but we're not saying that it is. There's the other one that they always like to use. We're not saying it's not, but we're not saying it is either. Rubio said some of the unidentified aerial vehicles over U.S. bases possibly exhibited technologies not in the American arsenal. He also noted, maybe there's a completely sort of boring explanation for it, but we need to find out. In other words, what he's saying is this may also be weather balloons. Of course, that's what they always said, right? In the 50s and 60s. It's just swamp gas. So I'm going to skip a little bit because they kind of do some backstory here on the agency itself. I really don't care about the agency because the reality is we know that they've been working on this shit since, whenever. Something happened in the 40s, and they have been working on it ever since. Whatever it is. Okay? I'm not going to dive into the conspiracies that there's some freaking, dead aliens in a freezer somewhere in, Utah or whatever. Something happened out there, and it started getting real when we started dropping nuclear bombs and we started testing, right? And that's when, shit got real. And it's been weird ever since. And one of the interesting things that it's hard to refute is just the sheer amount of stories of sightings. Not the abductions, okay? But the stories of just seeing them, where you have events take place. And it just, you can't deny the amount of stories. Now, if you want to argue over, if you want to go through and refute every one of them, go for it. But after a while, when you get into, when you realize that you've refuted like 100 and there's still like 10,000 left to go, at what point do you say, well, maybe there's something going on, right? And then, of course, with the military videos being released, there's some evidence there that something, we're not actually as crazy as we thought we were. Maybe there's something actually out there. What it is, we don't know. Pentagon's previous director, Luis Elizondo, a former military intelligence official who resigned in October 2017 after 10 years of the program, confirmed that the new task force evolved from the Advanced Aerospace Program. So again, it's just another agency on top of another agency on top of another agency. If you don't know anything about Project Blue Book, go check it out. Basically, what the Air Force did was sit down and come up with excuses for every possible UFO sighting to basically debunk everything. And again, it's one of those things where, like, okay, guys, we've gotten through 100 of these. We got 10,000 to go. Maybe there's something real, but they kept going. And you could argue all kinds of things. Oh, it's a conspiracy against people. I think the national security the idea of, okay, we found something. And I think this is actually what really is, this is the truth about the whole matter. If we do have actual UFOs that we have found, and they're locked away in some kind of special bunker or whatever, I think the secrecy has less to do with, you hear all the conspiracies about, like, the aliens are here and blah, 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 whatever. No. If they are, they've got great costumes, right? They're the best costumes in the world. But, I'm not going to get into that because I don't believe all that shit. What I do think is that if we do have it, it really is a national security thing. And I think what's happening right now, the Pentagon, one of two things could have happened. If you're a pessimist, then you probably buy into this conspiracy that the government is taking over our lives and all this stuff, and the corporate elites are taking over our lives. They're going to use the alien threat as a way to eventually enslave all of us. There's a serious conspiracy out there like that, where they're going to fake an invasion, and we'll give up all our rights and freedoms, and that's when they've got us. The elites, not the aliens. But if you're optimists like myself, here's what I think happened. Because humanity is the problem with these conspiracy theories of elites. They're made up of human beings. Human beings are stupid. Look at what's happening right now. I mean, we're idiots, right? You have half the country who says, I'm not wearing a freaking mask because it tears into my personal freedoms. You're taking away my First Amendment right of being an American because you're making me wear a freaking mask. You got half the country saying that shit, and then the other half saying, oh, by the way, you were born white, so you're a racist. Get over it. Get on your knees and beg forgiveness, and realize that you're never going to be forgiven. So we've got two halves of the country that have lost their minds. Now, if you look at those two halves, and then step back from, and look at the world, there's a lot of crazy idiots out there. There's a lot of... humanity is stupid. Humanity is super dumb. There should be no... third world countries should not even exist. Okay? We have enough things on this planet to spread it out and still have rich people. Right? And still have an elite class. But no, we're stupid. I mean, and it comes down to... I've said it before. It comes down to greed. It also comes down to just sheer stupidity, right? Hey guys, we're going to nuke the planet. We're going to do it 1 degree at a time. No, we're not. That doesn't exist. Okay, whatever. I remember in the winter we used to get snow, not 65 degrees and rain. Anyway, yeah, sure, it's not happening. Whatever. So. It's going to be one. I thought it was going to be a fun one. So anyway, so we're kind of stupid. So I don't think the grand conspiracy that these guys come up with can actually happen because we're just not that smart. And if we do have a few narcissist elites up there at the top that are plotting this, the sheer magnitude of logistics that you would need to accomplish to get this to happen, because there's just the other thing about humanity is we have too much variety, right? And I'm not talking about race. I'm talking about attitudes. I'm talking about society itself has multiple different varieties. You have within those societies, you have many cultures, like subcultures. You look at the South. The South is usually characterized as this one dark area, right? This one blemish on the side of America. But within that blemish, you have multiple degrees of southernness, right? You have the aristocratic South in Georgia and southern South Carolina. You have the deep South in Mississippi and Alabama. You have the progressive South with Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina. You've got the Appalachian South, Kentucky, West Virginia, and then you have this Florida thing, which is geographically south, right? But it's not really part of the South. And then Texas is Texas, and they claim to be a part of the South. They're not. They're Texas. Just quit trying to steal our shit. Just be Texas. You have enough stuff in your past that you don't have to be in the South. You can be your own Texas, right? And then, Louisiana. You look at Louisiana, it's got this French-influenced, wonderful culture down there. That looks nothing like anything else in the South. So, there's within the South, you have just multiple subcultures that make up this, to the rest of the country, makes up the single identity when it's more complicated than that. And you can say the same thing about the Northeast. You have the New England, and then you have the old New England, and then you have the Northeast. You have the industrial side of the Northeast. You have the agrarian side of the Northeast, which is nothing like the Midwest or the South. It's completely different agrarian culture up there. So, looking at it, you can't just label everybody, like, he's a Yankee, and he may be from, like, northern Pennsylvania, which is agrarian, So, it gets largely agrarian, right? So, it gets complicated. It gets more complicated than what we want to admit. I don't know what that has to do with UFOs, but let's get back to UFOs. Mr. Elizondo is among a small group of former government officials and scientists with security clearances who, without presenting physical... Oh, I remember what I was talking about now. So, the pessimist side, is the conspiracy theory that they're going to create an alien invasion. The optimist side, and this is what I believe happened. I believe that for years they tried to keep it under wraps because they didn't want anyone outside of the U.S. to know exactly what it was that they had found. Whatever it was. Okay? Whatever happened at Roswell, and any event after that, whatever happened, they didn't want anyone outside of the U.S. to know what was going on, to find out what we knew. At the same time, I'm sure they had the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI like checking in on foreign governments to see what they had. Did they have stuff too? What kind of stuff? So I think that's the real thing. That's the real story. And they're trying to figure out how this stuff works. And I think if they have it, now this is all if they had it, right? And this is where the Bob Lazar story comes in. But if they had it, I think that's what it was. And I think what happened with the Navy videos, they weren't planning on letting that out, right? And there's a lot of speculation that the reason why they haven't said anything about aliens is because the impact it's going to have on religion and philosophy and that kind of thing. And there's some truth to that, but I don't think that's the real reason. I think the real reason is because they didn't want other countries to know what they had, right? So then the Navy thing happens, and the Pentagon's kind of caught with its pants down, and then they finally have to say, well, okay, and now that Congress, you got a bunch of Xers in Congress right now. And they, don't forget, we grew up with the X-Files. So we, God knows how many of those posters were sold with the flying saucer and I think it was I Want to Believe from the X-Files. Because that's what Mulder had on his wall. So the Congress gets wind of this, says, ha-ha. And so now you have Rubio, who brings up a very good point, a very valid point. If they're flying over our military bases, we need to find out what the hell it is because they're violating airspace. So that's what this whole thing is predicated on, is an actually, pretty intelligent Gen X senator from Florida who, if you follow him on Twitter, he's constantly quoting the Bible. So he's skeptical in his philosophy, right? But he comes up with a way say, hey, fellas, this shit's flying over. Don't you think we ought to find out what it is? So, there you go. Let's see here. Okay, this is the fun part. This is the cool part of the New York Times article. Now, they talk about the dude who used to be part of the program that has again changed names and that kind of stuff, and they moved the programs. It's the same program. They just move it from department to department and rename it each time. Eric W. Davis, an astrophysicist who worked as a subcontractor and then a consultant for the Pentagon UFO program since 2007, said that in some cases, examination of the materials had so far failed to determine their source and led him to conclude we couldn't make it ourselves. So let me say that again. In some cases, examination of the materials had so far failed to determine their source and led him to conclude we couldn't make it ourselves. Mr. Davis, who now works for Aerospace Corporation, a defense contractor, said he gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency as recently as March about, quote, retrievals from off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. Oh, I'm so excited. They found the Millennium Falcon. So, Mr. Davis, the physicist who used to work for the Pentagon and now he works for a contractor, which works for the Pentagon, gave a classified briefing to a Defense Department agency about retrievals from off-world vehicles not made on this Earth as soon as March. Okay, so it's not that long ago. Okay, and now you're starting to see the pieces fall into place because it's June that Rubio releases the Senate report. Mr. Davis said he also gave classified briefings on retrievals of unexplained objects to staff members of the Senate Armed Services Committee on October 21st, 2019. So, what that means is, if this Mr. Davis is to be believed, even though the Pentagon has not confirmed or denied that they have physical evidence, that they more than just the videos, they got it. They what this Mr. Davis has said is that they have retrieved artifacts that could not have been made by humans and from materials that are not from this planet. Yay! All right, so let's talk about videos. Isn't that cool? Actually, first I want to talk about the and this BetaFiles episode is brought to you by ADD. Because it's just so much fun. It's so exciting. This is the exciting stuff. All right. This is one of the more fun topics that I get to play with, and it's so cool. So cool. And Jason always makes fun of me. I'm fascinated by the whole UFO thing. Okay? I don't 95% of what you hear about UFOs is just bullshit. Right? But there is that small little chunk. And like I said, there are ungodly amounts of people who have reported sightings. Don't worry about the abductions. Just leave the abductions to the side for a minute, because weeding through the abduction stories is like trying to find a needle in a like mountain of needles. You just, it's like trying to find a legit quote unquote abduction story, because they don't exist, right? There are a lot of people out there that, wholeheartedly believe they were abducted, but were they abducted or not? Who knows? You just don't know. I think, and I need to tell you the story about why like this all got my attention, how this actually happened, because it's hilarious. But it's just, but the sightings thing, you have so many more reports of sightings than you do abductions, that you have to stop. And you have, like, with a lot of the sightings, it's not a person seeing it. It is like a group. And typically, like, especially if you look at reports from the last 30 years in major urban areas. I mean, there was a sighting here in Greensboro where, like, they think about 15,000 people saw this. 15,000 people across the city. That's a lot of eyes, man. And when you've got that many people seeing the same thing, something's up, right? And so the sheer amount of sightings being reported, that's a whole different story, or a whole different issue to try and talk about. So when you look at, like I said, about 95% of what you hear about aliens and UFOs is bullshit. Because they have, it's an ingenious way to keep people off the trail. You drop little nuggets here and there, you create a conspiracy, and then you let them run wild with it, and they create all kinds of tales. I mean, look at David Icke, right? I mean, he's talking about, like, lizard people walking around us, and that the queen is a lizard. And that they've got some kind of, like, base on the moon or some shit. And then, of course, what was it, Apollo 18? I think it was Apollo 18 that didn't go. And then, of course, conspiracy is that it did go, but the aliens killed the astronauts. So there's actually a movie about that, I think. A fictional movie where they kind of play with the idea. But like I said, that little chunk, that little 5% that you can't explain. You can debunk the rest of the stuff, but that little bit that you can't explain, I think that's what we're starting to get pieces from. So here we go. This is the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2021. So this is part of the budget. June 17th, 2020, ordered to be printed. Mr. Rubio for the Select Committee on Intelligence submitted the report together with minority views, and minority views being his underlings, the people on the committee. And if you scroll down, and there's like all these different titles and stuff. If you scroll down, I mean, it's down. And they've got all kinds of stuff in here, like combating Chinese influence operations in the United States and strengthening civil liberties protections. Report on biosecurity risk and disinformation by the Chinese Communist Party and the government of the People's Republic of China. Okay, so this is basically like appropriating money for specific targets in the defense budget. And then you get to, advanced aerial threats. The committee supports the efforts of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenal Task Force. Phenomenon. Not phenomenal. Let me repeat that. The committee says the committee supports the efforts of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force at the Office of Naval Intelligence to standardize collection and reporting on unidentified aerial phenomenon, any links they have to adversarial foreign governments, and the threat they pose to U.S. military assets and installations. However, the committee remains concerned that there is no unified, comprehensive process within the federal government for collecting and analyzing intelligence on unidentified aerial phenomenon despite the potential threat. The committee understands that the relevant intelligence may be sensitive. Nevertheless, the committee finds that the information sharing and coordination across the intelligence community has been inconsistent, and this issue has lacked attention from senior leaders. Therefore, the committee directs the DNI, or Department of National Intelligence, or Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and the heads of such other agencies as Director of and Secretary jointly consider relevant to submit a report within 180 days of the date of the enactment of the Act to the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Services Committees on Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, also known as Anomalous Aerial Vehicles, AAVs, including observed airborne objects that have not been identified. The committee further directs the report to include 1. A detailed analysis of unidentified aerial phenomenon data and intelligence reporting collected or held by the Office of Naval Intelligence, including data and intelligence reporting held by the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. 2. A detailed analysis of unidentified phenomena data collected by Geospatial Intelligence, Signals Intelligence, Human Intelligence, and Measurement and Signals Intelligence. 3. A detailed analysis of data of the FBI, which has derived from investigations of intrusions of unidentified aerial phenomena data over restricted United States airspace. 4. A detailed description of an interagency process for ensuring timely data collection and centralized analysis of all unidentified aerial phenomena reported for the federal government, regardless of which service or agency acquired the information. 5. Identification of an official accountable for the process described in paragraph 4. 6. Identification of potential aerospace or other threats posed by the unidentified aerial phenomena to national security, and assessment be attributed to one or more foreign adversaries. In other words, could it be Russia or China or Iran or Guatemala or Ecuador or Alaska? It could be the tundra. Could be the Inuits. Could be Greenland. Identification of any incidents or patterns that indicate a potential adversary may have achieved breakthrough aerospace capabilities that could put United States strategic or conventional forces at risk. This part of it actually goes to things like the CIA, where they're basically giving money to the CIA specifically to go and check out what Russia and China's got. Right? Recommendation, if you ever wonder how that works, that you're reading it. You're hearing it. Recommendations regarding increased collection of data, enhanced research and development, and additional funding and other resources. Report shall be submitted in unclassified form, but may include a classified annex. So in other words, the report, when they give it over in 180 days, and then the paragraph under it is very interesting, because the next one is coordination of security for domestic military installations and other facilities. This is interesting because you haven't heard about this in the news, but apparently Chinese nationals have been trying to get into our military bases. And so the paragraph after the UFO thing is about beefing up security at the military bases because these Chinese nationals keep trying to get in. So that's kind of interesting. You got to read this. It's pretty interesting because there's a lot of shit in here that the press hasn't even touched, hasn't even talked about. So anyway, and I love how the Times puts the link for this, and then you open it up. And I know, and a lot of people probably feel the same way I did when I opened it up. When I opened it up, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to read through all this. But then I thought, no, wait a minute. That's the trick, right? They don't want you to read it. Because you see, it's kind of like the terms and agreements for Apple, right? You're not going to read 18, 20 pages of crap, of legal jargon that you're not going to understand. So anyway, so yeah, check it out. Definitely check it out, especially if just for these two sections about the UFOs and then about beefing up security at the bases because Chinese nationals are trying to break in on our soil. That's crazy, right? So maybe it is the Chinese. If you haven't seen Space Force yet, oh my God, it's so hilarious. I can't wait for season 2. It's so funny. But anyway, they're trying to weaponize the moon. It's hilarious. So anyway, going back to the UFOs. All right, so again, Rubio put this together. And what this basically, this chunk of the report is saying is, it's time to tighten up how we report these things, get a centralized voice that's actually reporting it, and you need to start telling us what's going on in the interest of national security. And he says the report itself has to be declassified, so you have to tell us something that the public can see. However, and this is what's interesting, there can be a classified annex. In other words, there can be pieces of the report that you can classify if it's too dangerous to let people know. This is not a conspiracy. If you watch any kind of movie or something like, oh, you see, they didn't want us to know. No, you dumbasses. It's so that Russia and China doesn't find out, right? So there's going to be some sensitive information that they want to try and keep under lid, even though they're going to be talking about what they've been seeing and what they've found so far. And they do that, again, kind of going back to the article, the New York Times article, as Taibbi pointed out in his book about those types of articles. It's dressed up as kind of general information to the public, but the reality is that it's sending a message to the others, letting them know that we do have these things. We've got it. Hey, fellas, what have you got? It's kind of like those. It's kind of like a game of poker. I got a 2 of clubs. I got 4 other cards you don't know anything about. It might be. There might be 3 more 2s in there. You never know. So anyway, all right. So that's that. Let's. I want to show you the Rubio thing, and then I'm going to show you. I'm going to end the whole thing with Rogan and David Fravor, who was the naval pilot who saw the Tic Tac. But this is Rubio talking about responding to a reporter about this thing that I just read you, and that kind of stuff. All right, so here we go. Here's Marco Rubio, senator of the great state of Florida.
Are we alone? Look, here's the interesting thing for me about all this, and the reason why I think it's an important topic, okay? And that is, we have things flying over our military bases and places where we're conducting military exercises, and we don't know what it is, and it isn't ours. So that's the legitimate question to ask. I would say that, frankly, that if it's something of outside this planet, that might actually be better than the fact that we've seen some technological leap on behalf of the Chinese or the Russians or some other adversary that allows them to conduct this sort of activity. But the bottom line is, if there are things flying over your military bases and you don't know what they are because they're not yours, and they exhibit potentially technologies that you don't have at your own disposal, that to me is a national security risk, and one that we should be looking into. And so that's the premise I begin with.
Let's clear this up. Who would be looking into this? And they would be generating some sort of a publicly available report on, you're not using the phrase unidentified flying objects. You have another euphemism for it, unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is not.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that. That's the one that the military uses internally, and ultimately, that's the one we used. And what we're saying, so the Office of Naval Intelligence, has impacted the Navy for the most part. I've seen reports on this now for the better part of a decade. Other countries have had similar reports, and so. But for our perspective is, there is someone flying in the airspace that no one else is allowed to fly in, and we don't know who it is, and it isn't something we have. We need to know what that is. I mean, that's in my mind. I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't want to know what it is. Maybe there's a completely sort of boring explanation for it, but we need to find out. And so that's really what we're asking about, and we're asking them to make public as much as possible that information. None of that really fits into the mold of classified per se.
All right, but what's your gut? Are we alone in the universe, or is there something else out there?
I don't have a gut feeling about it because it's a phenomenon. It's unexplained. I just want to know what it is, and if we can't determine what it is, then that's a fact point we need to take into account. I wouldn't venture to speculate beyond that.
All right, so there's Rubio. talking about it. He pretty much said everything that we had seen in the New York Times article about how his concern is that it's a threat against national security. These things are going over military bases, and he wants to know what they are. He wants to get to the bottom of it. And again, he walked up to the line, but he wouldn't cross it, right? Which is rhetorically, that's a smart thing to do. You don't want to come out and say, yeah, it's aliens. So anyway, so that's Rubio. Now we're going to pivot to Commander David Fravor when he went on Rogan. And I pulled, this is actually a clip that I guess Jamie pulled for promoting this particular episode. But it's a very interesting clip. It's one of those things where you sit back and you're like, oh, wow. But the title on YouTube was something along the lines of this is not the 3 videos that we ended up with is not uncommon. That this is actually much broader and more common than you would think. Okay, so here's David Fravor on Joe Rogan. Again, this is the naval pilot who took the video of the Tic Tac UFO. One of the 3 videos that the Pentagon released. Okay, so here we go with David Fravor.
Now, when you came back, and what do you do with this information? Do you report it? Do you talk to people about it?
Mm-hmm. So the typical process, anytime we fly, everything gets debriefed. So because it was a 2-seat airplane, usually the junior person in the jet goes down. So I was the boss, so I wasn't going down there. So we have a thing called CVIC, which is the Carrier Intel Center. So they go down. We always take our tapes because we record stuff when we're fighting. They take it down, and it's really to exercise the system when we're in training so that when we actually get over to, in this case, we were going over to the Persian Gulf, anything that we do comes in and gets debriefed, and then it all gets sent off. That's how you get the CNN video and all that. So they go down and they debrief, and they have to tell, hey, we chased this object. We don't know what it is, and of course, everyone now is going to make jokes because we know we're going to catch shit because that's how the Navy works, Right. And I told him, I said, I remember telling the guy in my back seat, I said, dude, we're going to catch maximum shit for this. And he goes, yes, sir. I'll show you the comics. I have them on my phone. We do. The airplane comes out. So we know it's going to come down. So he goes in, they debrief this. Both crews go in. And of course, everyone at Intel thinks this is hilarious. So the flight, Chad comes in with his tapes, when he lands. And here's the thing. Oh, VFA 41. Haha, you guys see any UFOs out there? And he pulls out that tape and drops it on the counter. He goes, yeah, it's on here. So they're like, oh, shit. So they copy it. They play it, and there's it looks like a rack system. They put the 8mm in. It gets copied to a hard drive. And then they archive it. So you go, okay. So they got this video. And then, the ship, this spreads, if you have a rumor on the ship, 5,000 people are going to know about it within probably 30 minutes. I mean, it spreads that. It's like a virus. So the whole ship now knows that we chased this. I guarantee the whole Princeton knew this stuff was going on. And it goes all the way up. The admiral knows about it. The captain of the ship knew about it. And then all the movies, because they play movies for us on the ship, and they run like a 12-hour loop. So, of course, the movie selection is Men in Black 2, Signs, Independence Day, and we know we're going to be on the airplane comic because there's always a comic. So you do something stupid or like this, then you're going to be on the comic. I'll show you the comics here in a little bit. Okay. They're pretty funny. So that went on for 2 days, but, we're in the middle of workups. And I got a squadron to run. So it's like, there was, after about the first day and a half, it really died down. And then there's always that closet people that you don't think that are really like UFO buffs. And, we had one of the Marines would always come and he'd sit down. Hey, Skipper, can I sit with you? I go, you want to talk about the UFO? He goes, yeah, I can't get it out of my mind. And then we would just sit there and talk about it, and to me it was like, weirdest thing, my entire now flying career is defined by 5 minutes of chasing this white Tic Tac vice almost 4,000 hours, flying. So
now, did you encounter anyone else that had a similar experience?
I've talked to a couple of guys from the East Coast event, the gimbal video. Mm-hmm. One of them I talk to daily. He's a pretty good friend of mine. Totally different now. Keep in mind, ours is 2004. The gimbal video is 2015. The funny part about the gimbal video and the East Coast stuff that was going on, because that's off the VACAPE, so off the coast of the United States, they're called warning areas, and all they are is if you look on an aviation map, they're these big areas that are blocked off by blue, and they say like Whiskey 291 or Whiskey 243. And
is the gimbal video available in the same way that video is available?
Yes.
Yeah, government owned.
Okay,
Yeah.
Find that, Jamie.
So, and I was talking to him about it because I actually a buddy of mine, he just retired. He was he led the fighter wing on the East Coast, and I had called him up because we start finding out that these things were so prevalent out off the East Coast of the United States, and there's a couple of them. So there's we're going to talk. What they started seeing originally was these things, and one of them the airplane almost hit one of these things, but it looks like a cube inside of a clear beach ball. So they don't know if it's actually like a surrounding or you don't know if it's a force field. And you see kind of in the gimbal video, it's got like an aura around it where ours didn't. I always laugh. I go, ours was a Tic Tac. These are not. That means there's different stuff out there that we don't know. But they had 2 airplanes flying, and we fly when we go out to train. We have a distance. We'll just say we're a mile apart. As we're flying out, so they're flying out, and the airplanes are deployed. We call it combat spread, and one of the airplanes almost hits one of these, goes close down like 50 feet down the side, and almost hits one of these floating cubes inside of the beach ball. And someone goes, "Wow, it's a balloon." It's not a balloon. I mean, these things are literally sitting still. They're no effect from the wind. So if you got 90 knots of wind and they talk about it, these things are just sitting there. So 60 or 70 people had seen it because the radars, the newer radar in the Super Hornets is extremely, extremely capable. Okay. And at first when they started seeing stuff, they were like, it's just like, maybe it's the radar just giving me a false target. That radar really doesn't give false targets. And then someone did exactly what Chad did, is they threw their targeting flare out there, and all of a sudden when you see a heat signature or there's a return, there's obviously something out where that blip is at.
What is a targeting flare?
That's we call it the AT flare. It's an advanced targeting flare. It sits on the left side of the airplane, and it's
so you launch it like a flare?
No, it's a FLIR, forward-looking infrared receiver.
Oh,
so it's when you see the bombs blowing up on TV, and that looks like a black and white, and you see it fly. That's the targeting pod.
Okay.
It's got a laser in it. It's got an IR marker in it. It's a very capable system that syncs up to the Hornet, so everything kind of marries up. So this is the Go Fast. No, this is Go Fast. That's not it. No, it's the other one.
No, it's the one that looks like the.
What is that one?
That's called the Go Fast. That looks like a Tic Tac, and that was another one taken off the East Coast. But they grab it and
bookmark that one.
It's screaming across the ocean at a very high rate of speed. And there's been some debunkers that say, well, it's really not going that fast. It's just the way the airplane is and how the mechanics of the pod are working. When you talk to the crew, because it's actually, I could ask my bud, I'm pretty sure it's the same backseater took both of these videos. Took the Go Fast video and took the gimbal video. And my buddy was on the flight with the gimbal video. But these things, so I called my bud because I'm like, hey, how many people are seeing these things? They're like 60 or 70.
60 or 70.
60 or 70 people had seen these things on radar. And I said, well, what do you do? And they said, well, we put out a NOTAM, which is a notice to airmen that just says, hey, these things are out there, so just be careful because we don't want you to hit one. Yeah.
Whoa.
And it's kind of like ours. You go, because you would ask, who do you tell? Well, everyone knows. Well, what do you do? And I said, well, because it was all white and it didn't have any markings on it and it didn't have any wings and it didn't have any rotors and it outperformed anything that we have. I think if I would have painted China or Russia on the side.
Is this the gimbal video?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the same pod.
Start from the beginning, Jamie.
What we're looking at. And when the crew finds it, now what you're not seeing, you're seeing the targeting. When you hear them start talking, when you listen to the video, you'll hear the guy go, dude, look, they're all over. Look at the SA page. So we have a situational awareness page, and whatever the radar is getting returns on, it'll show up. It's kind of like our God's eye view in the airplane. So the pod can only look at one thing. So he designates that as his primary target. So that's where the pod is staring. The radar is still seeing everything else. So what they're actually seeing in this video is when you see the object that he's tracking. When I was talking to one of the other pilots, he said there's actually, when you see the radar video, there's it almost looks like a formation in front of them, like 5 smaller ones that are moving in front of it. And then they turn. So like a formation, these things turns and starts going the other way. And then while they're filming the gimbal video. And that's kind of the comms when you hear, dude, holy cow, look, they're all over.
This is unreported new information that he's actually saying right now, everybody knows this video. This is the one that they say turns like the Lazar craft like belly first. However, what he's telling you right now is something that is not public yet. He's telling you that there was a V formation of other objects that the public has yet to see.
You're not going to.
You're not going to.
It's a radar tape.
Don't you love it? So much fun. There you go. So we have, over the past few years, we've had, turn my headphones back up. Now I can hear. Over the past few years, we've had the pilots coming out and saying, hey, there's stuff going on. Pentagon has come out and said, okay, look, these are 3 videos. 3. Now, he's saying, what he said in that piece with Rogan was that 60 or 70 pilots are seeing these things, are regularly seeing these things, right? That's a lot of pilots seeing them. That doesn't include the commercial pilots that see these things daily. There are tons of accounts out there of commercial pilots, commercial air pilots. They're seeing them. There's also, if you go on YouTube, look up Mexican Air Force UFO. The Mexican Air Force released a video where there is a line of UFOs that one of the Mexican pilots runs into. They're all over the place. There's videos from Italy, videos from up in Norwegian area. Just of the pilots seeing these things, it's kind of crazy. And so one of the interesting things is, and I'm going to come back to the physical evidence thing. One of the interesting things though is that now something has happened, because the frequency of UFO sightings, and we'll just go back to the 90s, okay? And then in the 90s, we saw an uptick. And then in the 2000s, kind of levels off, not as many sightings. But in the past 10 years, sightings have just skyrocketed again. And so we're starting to see more and more UFOs. Or excuse me, UAPs. And we're seeing them more and more, and now we're getting confirmation from the military, first through video. Look, this is what they're seeing. Which confirms the commercial pilots that have been for decades saying, we've been seeing this shit while we're flying. Right? So you got confirmation just by the fact that the Navy pilots are seeing them. Now we know the commercial pilots, yeah, they've been seeing them too. Okay? So it kind of like, it's a double confirmation almost. It's kind of cool that way. But the most interesting part about this whole thing is that line from the Times article from that Eric Davis guy who talked about how he gave multiple briefings to people in the Defense Department and the Senate Intelligence Committee about the fact that they have retrieved materials from what can be assumed are wrecked craft, and this material is not made from this planet. So Rubio's saying we need to figure out what's flying over our military bases. It could be Russian, it could be Chinese, it could be an adversary of some kind. And then you've got this Eric Davis guy saying, yeah, we got a couple of pieces. We got some pieces. I think they got more than pieces. Well, we got some pieces, and they're not from around these parts. And we can't make them. So, I mentioned Bob Lazar a couple times. I'll just give you a really fast, really quick version of his story, and then I'll pull this to a close. Lazar, in 1989, Lazar was interviewed by a local Las Vegas reporter. George Knapp is the guy's name, was the reporter. And George interviewed him, and Lazar came out and said, I used to work at Area 51. Actually, he didn't work at Area 51. He worked at a site called S1, which is part of if you look at Area 51 as being part of a larger complex, right? The Nevada sites where they've got all these testing facilities are huge. And so you have multiple, like Area 51 is really like a small piece of this larger puzzle. And he was at a place called S1. And that's where he claimed that they had the actual UFOs. One of the things that Lazar said was they had a few that were in working condition, and then they had a couple that they had dug up. So these are things that they found by accident, I guess you would say, on archaeological digs. Lazar also, and you heard at the very end of that, this guy named Jeremy Corbin talk about how the aircraft tilted up before it moved forward. And if you watch the gimbal video, that's exactly what happens. Well, here's the thing. Back in 1989, Bob Lazar explained that when he was there at S1, they did a test flight of one of the ones that were fully intact. And what happened was the craft started out here, and when they got ready to move forward, it went belly up and then pushed forward. So all of a sudden you have something that he was talking about 30 years ago versus video evidence of this happening in 2004. Right? And there's other things that Lazar said that has since, like, oh yeah, well, we called him crazy back then, but this is actually what's happening. So there's a documentary about Bob Lazar on Netflix. It's okay, but I think you'd get more information if you watch when he went on Rogan, and tells his story on Rogan. And then there's also George Knapp went on Rogan here just a couple weeks ago, and it's pretty good. And they talk about this stuff. Now, some of the stuff is iffy. It's kind of like, I don't know. And when you listen to and watch George Knapp, he tells you, like, this is kind of sketchy. This is sketch. But this is what he says that happened, or this is what they said happened. And of course, there's all these problems around Bob Lazar about, like, he claims that he went to MIT. MIT has no record of him being there. But there's a hole in that theory because they have met people that went to class with him and have confirmed that he did go to MIT, even though he's not on the record. Same thing with he used to work at some kind of military installation. They wiped him out of the books, and somebody produced an actual phone directory from the installation at the time that he said he was there, and he's in there. He's in the phone installation, even though all of his employee records are gone. So there's all kinds of things, it's kind of like, oh, maybe they did try to scrub him, right? So I don't know. It's kind of weird. So the Lazar story is odd. But like I said, if you want to check out the Joe Rogan episode with Bob Lazar, and then the one with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbin. So anyway, and of course the David Fravor one, and like I said, I'll have links to those kinds of things in the description. I hope you don't think I'm crazy. I hope you don't think, oh my God, he's one of those idiots that probably, have I ever seen things that I could not explain? Absolutely. I've seen it. I've seen a couple. Seen a few. And you can't explain them, and you don't know what you're looking at. And that's probably the eeriest part of the whole thing. About this whole phenomenon, you're looking at when you see something, when you see one of these things, you don't know what you're looking at. It doesn't compute. Your brain just can't figure it out when you see these things. And it's weird. It's truly weird. Am I going to say that you're looking at aliens? I don't know. Like I said, you can't figure it out. You don't know what you're looking at. That's the trick to the whole thing. So when the Pentagon says that, yeah, okay, so we've been lying to you this whole time. Yeah, we have seen them. When the Pentagon says stuff like that, you're kind of like, okay, at least I'm not the only one. At least I'm not actually going crazy. So, anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was as fun as I'd hoped it'd be. Like I said, this episode brought to you by ADD. So, I meant to tell you the story real fast. So, how I stumbled onto this. This is how much little the public paid attention to this when it broke. Okay? This almost flew completely under the radar. I didn't know about it, when it was released like 7 days ago. I found out about this last night. Okay? This is how I found out about it. So, you want to talk about ADD. I was watching the Joe Rogan podcast with Post Malone, and it aired yesterday afternoon. And so, yesterday evening, I was watching it, and they were all over the place. Okay, it's one of those podcasts where they're just kind of shooting in all directions, and they come across and they start talking about aliens, and they just kind of, and Rogan just kind of sidesteps it, which is crazy because Rogan is all about this stuff. I mean, he doesn't. He says he's skeptical. He says he wants to believe, but he holds out for more evidence, right? So Rogan just kind of offhandedly says, something along the lines of, look, the Pentagon just announced a couple days ago that they actually found this stuff, that they actually have evidence, physical evidence. And I'm like, whoa. So immediately I open up Chrome and I'm like, what is he talking about? So I typed in Pentagon UFO, and that's when I found the New York Times article. And then, of course, the New York Times article has the Senate Intelligence Committee report in a hyperlink in there. And then from there, popular mechanics. We didn't talk about the popular mechanics, but I'm still going to put the link up. So so that's how I tripped onto this. And I was just like, okay, I know what I'm doing for my podcast tomorrow. Screw the picket fence. We will talk about the picket fence, I promise. The picket fence has more to do with deregionalizing America in the 1950s. So that's going to be, if you're into 1950s culture or suburban culture and the establishment of the suburban culture myth, because everything's a myth. None of this is real. You realize that, right? You live in a narrative that's not real. Okay, everything is made up. It's a fiction. So anyway, we'll talk about that. It's one of the things that 1984 really does a really good job of, is exposing those narratives that we live under. That and Fahrenheit 451, 481, 451. I can't remember. It's 451, right? It's whatever the temperature burning a book is. Fahrenheit 451. And A Brave New World too. But all those dystopian novels really do a good job of exposing how we live by narratives. Even The Matrix. In fact, the Matrix, the whole plot of The Matrix is built on which narrative is real and which one's fake, right? So anyway, so this is exciting stuff. I get tickled when something happens with the UFO stuff. And then, of course, I'll spend a day or two looking at it and trying to prove it on one side and trying to debunk it on the other, and then walking away with a new answer to several old questions, or new questions for several old answers, right? And that's the fun part of this. Here's the thing. You can't take any of this stuff seriously. You can't sit there. You can't make a religion out of this shit, because you'll be disappointed. So just be skeptical, healthily skeptical, but at the same time, don't be afraid to let your mind wander. It's okay. It's okay to think about stuff. It's okay to think, okay, what if this is real? Because one of the big questions that even I have is, if this is real, what does that do to God? Does it make God bigger? More diverse? Does it make God smaller? Does it make God non-existent? That one is a good question. Right? Was Jesus just another alien? Don't you dare say that. He was the Son of God. What if God was an alien? Technically, God kind of is an alien because he's not from here. So, there you go. Ha ha! Okay. So there you go. Maybe the aliens are little angels. All right. So we will, in the next BetaFiles. Well, no, screw it. I'll just surprise you. Tune in and find out. All right. Don't forget, you can catch us, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can catch us on Stitcher, Spotify, Deezer. I kept saying listen to the other day. It's Listen Notes. We're on Listen Notes. So Stitcher, Spotify, Listen Notes, Google Podcasts, and Podbean. I haven't checked today to see if iHeart, iTunes, or TuneIn have taken us yet. But the minute we get on TuneIn, it's going to change my personal reality, because then I'll be able to ask my Echo, hey, play me. That'll be fun. So, anyway, check us out on those. Don't forget, some important announcements about the blog are coming. I can't say anything too much beyond that yet, because I don't want China and Russia to find out about it. So, make it a great day. Be safe. And always remember, if the sun comes up, there's opportunity. So take it. I'm the Barber. This has been the BetaFiles.